Initiating moisture.
Welcome to the Moist Meter. Today we're taking a look at the new remake, remaster, reimagining of The Last of Us, The Last of Us Part 1. So let's get down to business. The first Last of Us game is an absolute masterpiece and a damn near perfect story. This isn't any surprising information. If anyone's played The Last of Us, you absolutely remember it and will likely put it in your top 10 games of all time for good reason. But for the Moist Meter here, I'm kind of in a bit of a weird pickle because there's no real reason to talk about the game itself since it's the same game that released back in 2013, just with a lot of upgrades to its visuals as well as a couple of tweaks to its combat. But overall, the narrative, everything remains completely unchanged, and what more can possibly be said about The Last of Us that hasn't already been said? So instead of focusing on the actual game itself, I'm going to be focusing on all of the changes and upgrades that they brought to it. Now, this is the third time The Last of Us has been released. It came out initially in 2013, and then they had a remastered version in 2014, and now there is yet another remaster slash remake, whatever you want to call it, now. Now, I don't like to call this a remake because I think that should be reserved for massive overhauls to the likes of like Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 3 Remake, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, those really big game changers where it's a lot of things like core gameplay, even story changes, like that. Those to me are full-blown remakes, whereas The Last of Us Part 1 is more in just like a really passionate remaster. There are a lot of things they did remake in terms of its visuals, like they rebuilt a lot of things to amplify it all, and I get that, but it's to me more of just like a really high-quality remaster. So the question is it worth $70? And my answer is no. I think it is extremely well done, but it's also highly unnecessary. Last of Us isn't even a 10-year-old game. You know, it still looks good, but it obviously looks better here. They put a lot of work into making the characters' faces more emotive. They look a lot better. Everything looks a lot cleaner, a lot more high resolution. Reflections actually pop. There's so much from a technical perspective that they have nailed. And if you've never played The Last of Us, then this is the optimal way of experiencing it. However, for anyone that has played the original or the remaster, I just don't see why this would be worth $70. It's a $70 visual upgrade. So if you really just got the itch to replay the game, then yeah, this is the way to do it. But $70 to me is just way too steep. This should have been 40 tops because they also took out the multiplayer. So this released with less content and a higher price tag than the original. You know, like to me, it just $70 isn't justifiable here. But yes, everything they added to it, I think, is pretty substantial. After having played it, you can really feel the difference. You can see the difference. The combat is significantly smoother. You know, the combat actually flows really nicely now. There's nothing janky or wonky about it. All of it just it's a much better experience. But it's still the same exact core game that has already been re-released once. You know, you're paying for the same thing a third time. It's kind of like in SpongeBob where King Neptune takes his first Krabby Patty and he's blown away. He's like, holy fuck, that's so good, I think I'll try it a second time. So he vomits it into his hand and eats it again. That's kind of this here, you know? It was so good the first time, I can't wait to have it a second time. And now we're going for thirds. I just don't think it warrants a $70 price tag, especially because they did remove multiplayer. Like, that was a big component of the first Last of Us game. And it's not here. And this is more expensive. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I understand they remove multiplayer because they're trying to do like a standalone multiplayer Last of Us experience. At least that's what I'm told. So I get it, but if you're going to do that, then have the price reflect that. You have taken a lot of content out now, content that people liked in the first Last of Us, when you're charging more. You should be charging less because you're giving less. The visual upgrades, again, are huge. Like, they're meaningful. It's not just a few pixels or a little upscaled resolution. They have completely overhauled certain things, and the faces especially stand out. Like, the faces really help amplify the story because you can see a lot more emotion on them. So, like, they did a great job visually, but it's not $70 texture pack worthy. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. To me, that just seems a bit greedy. If you're curious about how big of a difference it is graphically and visually, I would recommend looking at Digital Foundry's video that compares it to the others. It does a great job of highlighting just how impressive the improvements are. But even with all of that considered, it still doesn't make sense to me that this would be at $70. Now again, if this was at like the $30 to $40 price tag, I would have zero complaints. I would say this is fantastic and it does a great job of really bringing The Last of Us to next gen. And I think it is great for people that have never played it. I think this would be a really great way of experiencing it, but just not at the current price. That's really just my major complaint. And also the removal of multiplayer is a complaint as well. Even though I didn't get super into the Last of Us multiplayer scene back in the day, I still would have liked to experience it again in the modern age, but still. Overall, I think they accomplished their goal of delivering a really high quality Last of Us 1 remastered remake version. I think they really knocked it out of the park here. It is jaw-dropping what they've been able to do, and it's clear that a ton of work went into it, so I appreciate that, and I think they nailed it. I just think they missed the mark on how much it should be. So plugging The Last of Us Part 1 into the moist meter, I'm giving it a nice 70%. The game itself it's a fucking 10 out of 10. Like, the actual Last of Us game, everyone already knows how incredible that game is, and everyone already knows how much I enjoy the first Last of Us game. It is so fucking good. But we're not talking about the game itself. We're talking about the changes, the visual upgrades, and everything here, which I do think absolutely slap. It's just, I think they needed to reevaluate what they're charging for it. So that's why it's at a 70%, but make no mistake, the actual Last of Us game is fucking amazing. So if you haven't played it, you definitely have to play it. And if you're just really itching for a replay through, this might be a good option if you've just got $70 laying around, I guess. But yeah, anyway, that's about it. See ya.